Hey there, welcome to English in Ease. I'm Emily, and today we're diving into something I know a lot of learners struggle with: how to talk in English without constantly overthinking. If you've ever found yourself pausing mid-sentence, second-guessing your grammar, or wondering if your pronunciation sounds off, trust me, you're not alone. Overthinking is one of the most common blocks English learners face, and while it's totally normal, it can also hold you back from sounding natural and fluent. But here's the good news: there is a way out of that cycle. Today, I'll walk you through why overthinking happens, how it affects your fluency, and most importantly, how to start speaking English more freely and confidently. Let's start with something simple. What exactly is overthinking when it comes to speaking English? For most learners, it's that moment where you're ready to say something, and your brain hits the brakes. You start mentally checking your grammar, questioning your word choice, maybe even rehearsing the sentence before you say it out loud, and suddenly, something that should have been a simple thought becomes a mental traffic jam. I get it. I've worked with so many learners who tell me they understand English just fine, reading, listening, even writing. But speaking? That's where it gets complicated. Not because they can't speak, but because their mind is so busy trying to say things perfectly that nothing actually comes out smoothly. Here's what's really going on: when we try to speak, but we're afraid of making mistakes, like saying something grammatically wrong, using the wrong vocabulary, or mispronouncing a word, we fall into this loop of analysis. That mental pressure creates hesitation, and hesitation breaks the natural rhythm of speech. So if you've been in that position, maybe thinking, what if I mess this up? What if they don't understand me? I want you to know that's totally normal, but it's also something you can move past. Now, why does this happen so often? One major reason is fear of judgment. A lot of learners worry about how others will perceive them. They're thinking, what if I sound silly? What if they laugh? This fear becomes a heavy weight, and perfectionism makes it even worse. You want to get every word right, every sentence flawless, and that expectation becomes overwhelming. The result? You freeze, or you start speaking in a very slow, overly careful way that just doesn't sound natural. But here's something to think about. When was the last time you judged someone for making a mistake while speaking your language? Probably never. Most people aren't sitting around looking for your grammar slip-ups. They just want to understand you. That's it. Fluency doesn't mean perfection. It means flow. Being able to express your thoughts clearly, even if your grammar isn't 100% accurate all the time. So what can you do? Let's look at an example. Imagine this. You're trying to say something simple like talking about the weather, but your brain kicks into overdrive. You pause, hesitate, then finally say, I, um, think that the, weather is, very good today, right? It's slow, and the hesitation makes it feel unnatural. Now compare that with this version. The weather's really nice today. That second one? It flows. It's not overly complicated, but it sounds confident and smooth. The only difference is letting go of the urge to control every single word. And that's the core idea for today. Stop focusing so much on saying things perfectly, and instead, focus on expressing your message. That mindset shift can change everything. Because when you stop overthinking, you not only speak more fluently, you listen better too. You're no longer stuck in your head trying to prepare your next sentence. You're present, engaged, and that leads to real communication. Another huge benefit? You stop translating. One of the biggest habits that causes overthinking is mentally translating from your first language. Your brain goes from your native language to English, word by word. But that takes time, and it rarely works out smoothly. Instead, the goal is to start thinking in English. That means forming thoughts directly in English, even if they're simple. And the only way to get there is through consistent practice, speaking often and naturally. Now, I want to talk about one of the most common mental barriers, the pressure to sound like a native speaker. Look, it's a nice goal, but it's not necessary. You don't have to sound like a native to be fluent or to be respected. Your accent doesn't mean your English is weak. In fact, your accent is a part of your story. It shows where you've come from. What matters most is whether people understand you and can connect with you. When we accept that, we release a huge amount of pressure. Instead of chasing native-like pronunciation or perfect grammar, we can focus on clarity, confidence, and communication. And this is something that native speakers do all the time. We mess up our sentences. We say and We forget words and rephrase things. That's normal. That's human. So let go of the idea that you need to speak like a textbook. Real conversations are messy, spontaneous, and imperfect, and that's okay. Here's a quick tip I want you to try after this episode. Pick a simple topic, maybe what you did today or what you're planning for tomorrow, and talk about it in English for 1 minute. Don't plan it. Don't write it down. Just talk. Out loud. You might hesitate. You might stumble. That's fine. The goal is to get used to speaking without mentally editing yourself first, because that's where fluency begins, not with perfection, but with practice. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the specific mental blockages that stop learners from speaking freely, like fear of mistakes, fear of judgment, perfectionism, and pressure to sound native. And I'll show you how to break through each one of them. Let's keep moving forward. Your natural, fluent English is already inside you. We're just learning how to unlock it. All right, now that we've laid the foundation and explored how overthinking holds us back from speaking naturally, let's go a little deeper. Because underneath all that hesitation are some common mental blockages, and these aren't just random bad habits. They're emotional patterns, fears, and beliefs that can quietly shape the way we approach speaking English. So, let's pull those patterns into the light. One of the biggest mental barriers? Fear of making mistakes. It's so common. I can't even count how many learners I've talked to who say, I want to speak English, but I'm afraid of saying something wrong. That fear becomes a wall between your thoughts and your voice. You're about to say something, but your brain chimes in, wait, what if this isn't correct? And suddenly, instead of speaking, you're silent. But here's what I want you to ask yourself. What's really the worst thing that could happen if you make a mistake? You might use the wrong tense. You might mispronounce a word. Maybe someone asks you to repeat yourself, but more often than not, people understand you anyway. They nod, they smile, they respond. And if they don't, they ask for clarification. Mistakes don't stop communication. Silence does. When you make a mistake, you're learning. You're growing. In fact, you're doing the very thing that will help you improve the most, practicing out loud. Now, closely connected to the fear of mistakes is the fear of judgment. This one runs deep. Maybe you worry about sounding silly, or you're afraid that someone will laugh, correct you harshly, or think less of you. That fear can make even the most motivated learner feel small. But I want to offer a mindset shift here. Most people aren't listening to judge you. They're listening to connect with you. And when you speak English, even imperfectly, you're doing something incredibly brave. You're showing up in another language. That deserves respect, not ridicule. Sure, there might be people who are impatient. That happens. But don't let those few voices shape your entire journey. Most people are far more kind and supportive than you imagine. Now, let's talk about another sneaky mental trap: perfectionism. This one is tricky because it hides under the label of ambition. You want to speak well. You want to use complex vocabulary, sound polished, articulate. And that's great. Those are good goals. But the problem starts when perfection becomes a requirement before you even speak. You might tell yourself, I'll join the conversation when I know how to say this perfectly. But the truth is, that moment may never come. Language is messy, conversations move fast, and the only way to get better is to jump in now, mistakes and all. Here's something I want you to remember. Fluency is the reward for speaking imperfectly, not the requirement. Let me say that again. Fluency comes after you speak, not before. Let go of the idea that every sentence needs to be perfect. Start focusing on making your thoughts understood. That's what real communication is all about. And finally, let's tackle one more mental block that shows up all the time: the pressure to sound like a native speaker. I know how tempting it is to chase that native sound, the perfect American accent, flawless idioms, no mistakes. But this pressure can actually take you further away from fluency. Here's the truth. You don't need to sound like a native to speak excellent English. You just need to sound like yourself, speaking clearly and confidently in English. Your accent is not a problem. It's part of your identity. It shows that you've learned English, not that you've failed at it. When we stop trying to erase our accent or mimic every nuance of native speech, we give ourselves the freedom to speak authentically. And that authenticity is powerful. In fact, many successful professionals, speakers, and educators speak English with an accent. What they all have in common is clarity, not sameness. So, let's recap the mental blockages we've talked about so far. Fear of mistakes, which leads to silence instead of practice. Fear of judgment, which makes us self-conscious and hesitant. Perfectionism, which tells us not to speak until everything is right. Pressure to sound native, which distracts us from our own progress. These are the voices that often sit in the back of our minds during conversations, quietly slowing us down. But now that we've named them, we can begin to let them go. Because here's the thing: when you recognize a barrier, you can move around it. And to do that, we need strategies, tools you can use every day to train your brain to speak without that mental filter. To build fluency through action, not just theory. So let's shift gears. The first strategy I want to talk about is free speaking. This one is simple but powerful. Every day, set aside just 2 to 5 minutes to talk out loud in English. You can do this alone, and it doesn't need to be perfect or structured. Pick a topic, anything at all. How your day was, what you plan to cook, a movie you watched. Then start talking. The goal? Don't pause to fix your grammar. Don't stop to choose the right word. Just keep going. Train your brain to speak in flow, even if the words aren't perfect. This builds what we call automaticity, the ability to produce language without consciously thinking through every rule. Next strategy: shadowing. If you've never heard of this, shadowing means listening to a native speaker and repeating what they say immediately after, mimicking their tone, rhythm, and pace. You can use a podcast, a video, or even a TV show. Start with short clips. Listen to a sentence, pause, and repeat it exactly. Then go a little faster. Eventually, try to keep up in real time. This exercise does two powerful things. It trains your listening skills, and it programs your mouth and brain to produce English more naturally, like a native speaker does. It's not about memorizing, it's about building muscle memory. Now let's talk about chunking. Chunking means learning and using groups of words that often go together instead of thinking word by word. For example, instead of thinking, I want to go to the store, you think, I want to go to the store. That whole sentence becomes one unit, a chunk, and your brain processes it faster. This is how native speakers talk. We don't speak one word at a time. We speak in patterns, phrases, and rhythm. Learning these chunks helps you sound more fluid and confident. To practice this, pay attention to phrases you hear often in conversations, like at the end of the day, or as far as I know, or let me think about that. Start using them. Don't overanalyze. Just borrow them like tools in a toolbox. Okay, here's another powerful method: mental rehearsal. This is especially useful if you know you'll be in a situation where you'll need to speak English, like a meeting, a trip, or a conversation with someone new. Spend a few minutes imagining that conversation. What might the other person say? How would you respond? Visualize it. Play it out in your mind like a mini scene from a movie. It might sound silly, but it works. Athletes use this method to prepare for games. You can use it to prepare for conversations. Why? Because when your brain rehearses something, even mentally, it feels more familiar. And when something feels familiar, it feels less scary. One last method I want to mention before we wrap up today's part is this: use your voice every single day, even if you're not in a formal lesson, even if no one's around. Talk to yourself. Narrate your actions. Sing in English. Read out loud. The more your mouth and mind practice together, the more natural it becomes. And that's what fluency really is. It's not just knowledge in your brain. It's the ease with which that knowledge flows out of your mouth. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until your grammar is flawless or your accent is invisible. Speak now. Speak messy. Speak bravely, because your voice matters, and your fluency is being built, not in your mind, but every time you choose to speak out loud. Welcome back. So far, we've talked about the mental blocks that hold us back: fear of mistakes, judgment, perfectionism, the pressure to sound native, and we've started learning how to train our minds to speak more freely through free speaking, shadowing, chunking, and mental rehearsal. Now, let's take all of that and bring it into something even more personal and practical: your daily life. Because you don't need a classroom or a tutor to improve your speaking. The real progress happens in those everyday moments that we often overlook. So in this part, we're going to look at daily activities you can use to train your brain to think and speak in English, naturally and effortlessly. Let's start with one of my personal favorites: narrating your actions. This one is so simple, but it works like magic. As you go through your daily routine, whether you're making breakfast, cleaning up, or getting ready for work, just talk about what you're doing, out loud, in English. For example, as you're making coffee, say, "I'm filling the kettle. Now I'm waiting for the water to boil. Let me grab a mug. I think I'll add a little milk today." You don't have to make it fancy. The point is to turn your regular habits into speaking practice. This helps your brain associate English with real-life experiences, not just study time. Another great one? Describing what you see. This is especially useful when you're out walking, commuting, or just people watching. Look around and describe what you notice. There's a man walking his dog. The sky looks a bit cloudy. I see a woman wearing a red scarf. The bus is arriving now. By doing this, you're building your vocabulary for everyday life. You're also practicing the art of observation, turning real-world input into spoken English. And the best part? You're doing it in your natural rhythm, with real, relevant context. Now let's bring in passive listening with active repetition. Say you're doing chores, washing dishes, folding laundry, tidying up. These are perfect times to turn on a podcast or YouTube video in English. But don't just listen passively. Challenge yourself to repeat what the speaker says after each sentence or phrase. You hear someone say, "So, today we're going to talk about confidence in speaking." You pause and repeat. "So, today we're going to talk about confidence in speaking." You're multitasking. You're doing something with your hands while training your mouth and mind to speak in sync. It's relaxed, low pressure, and highly effective. Next up, small talk. Yes, that little thing we often avoid. Whether it's with a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger at a store, look for chances to speak, even briefly, in English. You can say things like, "How's your day going? Beautiful weather today, isn't it? Have you tried this before?" These short exchanges build your real-time response skills, and the more you do it, the more confident you'll become in casual, everyday situations. If you don't live in an English-speaking environment, don't worry. This next method is for you. Try thinking in English. This might sound strange at first, but it's incredibly powerful. Start with something simple. When you're planning your day, do it in English. Instead of thinking, Min fai ji cho, roi ve nha now com, you switch to, I need to go to the market, then. I'll head home to cook lunch. At first, your mind might resist. But with time, your brain gets used to forming ideas directly in English, without translation. And that's the goal, to make English your default language for inner thoughts. Now, here's another fun one. Watching movies or shows, but with interaction. You're not just watching, you're pausing, repeating, and mimicking. Let's say you're watching a scene in a show. You hear a character say, "You've got to be kidding me." You pause, then mimic the tone, the attitude, the body language. "You've got to be kidding me." Try to match not just the words, but the emotion behind them. It's playful, but it teaches you how native speakers really talk. Contractions, expressions, rhythm, and voice dynamics. This builds intonation, the musical quality of speech. And that's something textbooks can't teach you. Let me give you a mini routine you could use during your week. Morning. Narrate your actions while getting ready. Midday. Do a 2-minute free speak during lunch afternoon. Describe your environment during a walk or break. Evening. Watch a show and repeat a few lines out loud. That's already 4 to 5 moments of real practice, and you didn't have to schedule a class or open a textbook. Here's the thing. Your life is the classroom. The world around you, the thoughts in your head, the things you do every day, those are your English lessons. Now, you might be wondering, what if I don't feel confident enough to speak even to myself? Then start even smaller. Whisper. Mouth the words silently. Think in English internally. Fluency starts with familiarity, and familiarity grows from repetition. Even 1 minute a day is progress. Even one small effort today makes tomorrow easier. I want to remind you that this isn't about doing things perfectly. It's about building a habit of using English, not just learning it. Here's a great way to track your growth. Keep a speaking journal. Each day, write down a sentence or two about what you spoke about in English, whether it was out loud, whispered, or even in your mind. It could be something like, "Today I described my breakfast routine in English." "I talked about the weather while walking." "I practiced a sentence from a TV show." Over time, you'll look back and realize you've created a habit, a natural one. And that's what separates learners who improve quickly from those who feel stuck. They practice daily, even in small ways. Before we move on to the last section, let me leave you with one more thought. You don't need permission to speak English. You don't need perfect grammar, a native accent, or a language certificate to start using your voice. You just need to begin. And when you begin, when you dare to speak, even imperfectly, something shifts. Your confidence grows. Your brain adjusts. English becomes not something you study, but something you live. In the final part, we're going to wrap everything together and talk about why speaking English without overthinking can be one of the most transformative skills you ever develop, not just for language learning, but for life. We'll explore the big picture benefits of speaking naturally and how it changes the way you connect with people, understand the world, and express who you are. We've talked about overthinking, we've looked at the mental roadblocks that get in the way, and we've explored practical ways to train your brain and make speaking English a natural part of your day. Now, let's pull it all together and ask the big question: why does it really matter to speak English without overthinking? What are the real benefits of speaking naturally, confidently, and fluently, without constantly pausing, translating, or second guessing yourself? Let's start with one of the most obvious, but most important, benefits: fluency. When you stop overanalyzing everything before you speak, your brain starts to respond faster. You don't need to prepare every sentence. You can just talk. And when you talk more freely, the speed and smoothness of your speaking naturally improve. You're not wasting mental energy checking every word. You're using that energy to keep the conversation flowing. And that's fluency in action: the ability to speak continuously, comfortably, and clearly. The second benefit? Confidence. Confidence isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. And one of the best ways to build it is by speaking English regularly, without fear. Each time you open your mouth, even if you make mistakes, even if you pause or say something imperfectly, you're building your confidence muscle. And as that confidence grows, your anxiety goes down. You stop worrying so much about what other people think, and you start focusing on what you want to say. That's a powerful shift. Third, and this one might surprise you: faster thinking and better listening. When you stop pausing to mentally translate or edit everything before you speak, your brain starts to operate more efficiently in English. You begin to think in English, not just speak it. And once that happens, you can follow conversations more easily, understand jokes, respond quickly, and even recognize cultural references in real time. You also become a better listener. Why? Because when you're not stuck in your own head trying to prepare your next sentence, you're actually present in the conversation. You can hear the details, the tone, the emotion behind someone's words. That creates better connection and better communication. Which leads us to the next big benefit: connection. When you speak naturally, you sound more like you. Your real personality shows through. You're not just reciting memorized phrases, you're engaging in real human interaction, and that connection matters. Whether you're chatting with a coworker, making a new friend, interviewing for a job, or simply ordering coffee, the more natural and relaxed you sound, the more open others are to listening and responding. And here's a beautiful side effect: when you stop overthinking, the people you speak to feel more at ease too, because confidence is contagious. When you speak with ease, others relax. They stop focusing on your accent or grammar and start focusing on what you're saying. Let me share a quick story. One of my learners, Anna, told me that she used to dread speaking in meetings at work. She was always nervous she'd make a mistake or forget a word. But she started doing just two things: talking to herself in English while cooking dinner, and shadowing a 5-minute podcast each morning. After 2 weeks, she joined a meeting and shared her thoughts without freezing up. No script, no panic. Was it perfect? Number, but it was real, clear, confident. That moment changed how she saw herself, not just as a learner, but as a speaker. And that brings me to the final benefit of speaking without overthinking: freedom. Because when you speak naturally, English stops feeling like a subject. It becomes a skill, a part of you. You're no longer learning English just to pass a test or fill in blanks on a worksheet. You're using it to express your ideas, your humor, your thoughts, your emotions. And that's when English truly becomes yours. Let's sum everything up. Here's what speaking English without overthinking will give you: faster and smoother fluency, real confidence in your ability to express yourself, quicker thinking and better listening in real conversations, more meaningful connections with people, a sense of freedom and ownership in your learning journey. But how do you actually get there? You do it by showing up, daily, by talking to yourself in the kitchen, by repeating after podcasts, by describing the world around you, by thinking in English, even when no one's listening, by saying the wrong thing and laughing it off, by letting go of perfection and choosing progress. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how many words you know, it's about how often you use the words you already have. So don't wait. Speak now. Speak simply. Speak imperfectly. Speak honestly. And keep going. You're already doing the hardest part. You're showing up, listening, learning, and growing. I want to leave you with a small challenge. After this episode, take just 2 minutes, set a timer, and talk out loud about your day. Don't prepare. Don't filter. Just speak. Then do it again tomorrow and the day after. Because the more you speak, the more your thoughts become sentences. The more your sentences become conversation. And the more conversation you have, the more you'll feel like English is your language too. Thank you so much for being here with me today. If this episode helped you, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment or let me know what topics you'd like to hear in future episodes. And don't forget to subscribe to English in Ease so you never miss a chance to grow your English in a relaxed, supportive way. Keep speaking. Keep growing. I'm Emily, and I'll see you in the next episode.